Okay guys, today we're going to be readdressing integers. This is something we hit on chapters 5 and 6. First thing we're going to do is relearn, because it just takes a little bit of time to relearn, again, positives and negatives and what that means when we're adding and subtracting. So half of our homework today is just going to be reviewing that. Something you're really going to need as we go into next year. So let's review a little bit here. For example 1, we have a 2 plus negative 3 equals negative 1. I'm just going to show you the answer outright. As a reminder, what that means is when we have a 2 right here, that is a positive 2, that's 2 pluses, and then we have a negative 3, that's 3 negatives, and essentially those are like the little circle, I called them chiclets, the things that we played with in chapters 5 and 6 to find positive and negative. We had the positive ones were kind of what I called the pukey colored ones, and then the negatives were the red. So what this means is basically when I have a plus and a minus, a plus 1 and a minus 1 gets me 0. In other words, these things right here are going to cancel each other out. So a plus 1 and a minus 1 gives me 0, a plus 1 and a minus 1 gives me 0, and whatever you have left will be your answer. And so that's how I got the answer of negative 1. And that works when we're doing addition, and that's only for addition. Okay, so if you want to write that one down, that would be a really good idea. Another thing that we're going to review is subtraction. So we're going to go ahead and look at subtraction right here. Subtraction. So with subtraction, this time, what makes subtraction a little bit weird is I ask you to take something away we don't have. For example, I have 5 positives. So if I drew a picture, I'd have 5 pluses, and then now it says take away 3 negatives. If it said take away 2 positives, that's not a big deal. We can do that. We've been doing that since we can remember. But it says take away 3 negatives. We don't have that. So this is a classic situation where if it is subtraction, that actually tells us we want to do keep, change, and flip. Okay, we want to keep the first number, which is a positive 5. We want to change the sign to a plus sign. Now we're going to flip the sign. So in other words, if this was negative, it's now going to be positive. And that's going to give us a more accurate picture of what's really going on here. So now it simply is 5 plus 3. So it's 5 positives, 3 positives. I'm going to go ahead and add those together. And just, I have nothing to take away. There's no zeros, there's no canceling, so I just have a total of 8. So those are 2 good examples. You might want to write those down. Those will help you. Half your homework is right there in front of you, just relearning addition and subtraction of positive and negative integers. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on here. Now, let's go ahead and review a couple more. For examples 3 and 4, I want you to go ahead and try these on your own. So whoever's watching this video right now, we're going to go ahead and pause it. And we want to kind of see how you do. So take a couple minutes here to try them, and then we'll restart the video, and we'll see how you did. All right, so these are the answers that we get here as we take a look at this. The first thing that I want to address right now that some of us may have missed is going to be this right here. This 4 is a negative 4. And the question is always, how do I know it's negative? Because of this sign right here in front of it, that is not a subtraction sign because I have to have a number to take away from in order for it to be subtraction. So just one thing that's kind of a little tricky about integers, probably the only thing, is anytime you have just a floating minus sign in front of the problem, it just means this is negative. And if you ever want to put parentheses around that to remind yourself, that would be fantastic. So that would be really helpful. So what we have here is we have negative 4 plus 6, and you should recognize that this was a keep, change, flip. So I went ahead and kept the first number to be negative. I changed my middle sign here to be from subtract to addition, and then I went from a negative 6, so this is the flip, to a positive 6. Went ahead and drew those out. I canceled off my zeros, and I am left with a positive 2. So that was how I did example 3. Now example 4 is very straightforward. We have a positive 6, we have a plus sign, I don't have to worry about keep, change, flip, and then we have negative 7. So I went ahead and drew 6 positives, I drew 7 negatives, I canceled out all my zeros, I'm left with 1 negative chiclet left right here. So that is how I got the answer of negative 1. Okay, so now we got to go on to something new. So now we're going to start playing with multiplying and dividing of integers. In other words, positive and negative numbers. So right now, what I have is something that we all know very, very well. 3 times 4 is 12. So the question becomes, what do I do if it's something more like these? What happens when I have, for let's say example number 2 here, I have 3 times negative 4. And what happens when I have negative 3 times 4? Or what happens if I have negative 3 times negative 4? So this is more of the new stuff that you're going to learn today. And this is the other half of your homework. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at that right now. Here is what you need to learn. So if there's anything that you write down today, this has to be it. You have to understand that when we have a positive times a positive, you're going to have a positive answer. And if you have a negative number times a negative number, you're going to have a positive answer. So that is new. This right here, we've learned that. This is 3 times 4 equals 12. But this is a little bit different. This is when I have negative 3 times negative 4, I get a positive 12. So that's a little bit different to think about. This one right here, we have a positive times a negative. I'm going to get a negative answer. Or in this situation, if I have a negative times a positive, I have a negative answer. So what I want you to understand is simply this. If you have, and I'm going to highlight this here. So again, be sure you write this down, even if it's the short version here in white. You want to get this in your math notebook. If you have 2 things that are the same, positive times positive or negative times negative, my answer is going to be positive. It doesn't matter. If there's both the same, you're going to have a positive answer. However, if these are different, like these down here, and it does not matter the order, okay? It doesn't matter if the negative number comes first or the negative number comes second. Notice that my answer is negative. Okay? So, again, write these things down. Positive times positive, you get a positive answer. A negative number times a negative number, you get a positive answer. But now if I have one of each, and I do not care the order, your answer is going to be a negative number. Okay, so I'm going to take a few extra seconds here to just pause this. Make sure you get this one written down. Okay, we're going to go back and readdress here these example problems. So we already knew this one, 3 times 4. When I say this one, I'm talking about this very first one. We have 3 times 4. We already know it's 12, but there's the example. Positive times positive equals positive. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at example 2. I have a positive number times a negative number. I have one of each. That gave us a negative number. So what is 3 times 4? Well, in this case, it's going to be 12. And since we know the answer is supposed to be negative because I have one of each, my answer is going to be negative 12. Okay, over here at example 3, we have a negative 3 times positive 4. So this is going to be very similar to what we just did. We have one of each. And so we're going to have 3 times 4, which is 12. And because I have one of each, it's going to be negative 12. All right, and then the last one, we have a negative 3 times a negative 4. These are both the same. And so because of that, we have a positive answer. So we just are simply doing 3 times 4, which we know is to be 12. So hopefully this will help kind of tie these things together. These two both have positives or they both have negatives. My answer is just going to be a positive 12. Okay, these two have one of each. And if you have one of each, your answer will be negative. In this case, negative 12. All right. So you try these few. These are 4 example problems right now. Again, I want someone to go ahead and pause it, but please take note that right now at number 7 and number 8, there's more than one integer. Okay, I believe that you can probably figure out 5 and 6, but I want you to try 7 and 8, and then I'll talk you through them here in just a second. So go ahead and pause the video, and we'll have you try this right now. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the examples here. For number 5, you should have gotten a positive 42. And the reason you should get a positive 42 is because we have negative times negative. And when they're both the same, your answer should be positive. And that's how we get positive 42, because 6 times 7 is 42. On number 6, you should have positive times a negative, and you should recognize that one of those is not like the other. They're 2 different things, and so that means we're going to get a negative answer. So just 9 times 2 is 18, And now we decide, okay, one's positive, one's negative, we get a negative answer. Now, number 7 and 8 are a little bit trickier. You have to do this slowly, one at a time. This is basically going left to right because it's all multiplication order of operations here. We have a negative times a negative times a negative. So let's just deal with the first part. A negative 2 times a negative 3 is a positive 6. Okay, because we already established on example 5, a negative times a negative gives me a positive. So a negative times a negative gives me a positive. So 2 times 3 is 6. If I just copy the rest down, that helps me see I have a positive times a negative. And when I have one of each, you already know where I'm going with this, we get a negative answer. So 6 times 4 is 24. And because those two at the very end were different, one was positive, one was negative, you get a negative answer. And that's how we got negative 24. Okay, now let's go ahead and talk about number 8. We have a negative times a positive times a positive. We just want to do the first two. We're just going to go left to right because it's all multiplication. We have negative times positive, so that means my answer is going to be negative. So 6 times 2 is 12. So what I get right here is a negative 12. And I want to go ahead and multiply that by 4. I'm just copying down the times 4. I'm not making that up. It's right there in the problem. I'm just copying it. So now I have a negative times a positive. And just like above, you have one of each. So you should start to recognize, okay, if I have one of each, when I multiply, I should get a negative number. And 12 times 4 is negative 48. Okay. All right. So the question is going to now come up, what about division? Well, the nice thing is it is the exact same rules. Notice the only thing that is different between what you wrote down before and what you write down here is that your symbol changes. So it's no longer positive times positive equals positive. It is now positive divided by a positive equals positive. So the exact same rules apply, which is really pretty nice because you don't have to worry about anything new here. So once you have those first kind of 4 things learned, you're good to go. So again, positive divided by positive, when they're both the same, you get a positive. You have a negative divided by negative, you get a positive answer. However, if they are flip-flopped, you have one of each. You end up with a negative answer. So let's go ahead and try a few of these on your own. Very simple, one at a time. Go ahead and pause the video here, and we'll check back in just a few minutes to see if you're getting these right. I want you to just go ahead and try a couple of these on your own, just see how you do. Okay, for example 9, you should have gotten negative 5, and the reason is because you have a negative divided by a positive. You have one of each, therefore your answer is going to be negative. So simply 15 divided by 3 is 5. Number 10, you have a negative divided by a negative. They are both the same. That means your answer has to be positive. So it's just 25 divided by 5 is 5. Number 11, same story. You have negative divided by negative. That should get you a positive answer. They are the same. And right here you have a positive divided by a negative, and that's going to give you a negative. Okay, again, just one of each. So what does this all translate to? This translates to you going ahead and trying these things on your homework. This is going to be due Monday, anything you don't get done. Notice that there is addition and subtraction right through here. Some of those get a little bit longer, but nothing crazy. And then right here, this is the kind of the new stuff. We're going to do multiplying positives and negatives. And down here, you're going to be dividing positives and negatives. So let's work on that. Get that is due on Monday, and let's see what you can get done. So good luck. If you have questions, ask the teacher in the room. I'm sure they can explain it to you just as well as I can, or maybe you can watch the video again.